Hello, and welcome back to the Everyday English Podcast. Today we are going to talk about a feeling that I think almost every single English learner has experienced. It is a feeling of frustration, and maybe even a little bit of guilt. Mark, do you know that feeling where you have your headphones on, you are listening to an English podcast or the news, maybe you have been listening for an hour while you clean the house or commute to work, and then you take the headphones off and you realize something terrible?
I know exactly what you're going to say, Sarah. It is that moment where you take the headphones off and you realize you don't remember a single thing you just heard. It is like the sound went in one ear and right out the other. You know you listened, you know the audio is playing, but if someone asked you, hey, what was that podcast about? You would have no idea what to say.
Exactly. It is the illusion of productivity. You feel like you are studying because you are surrounded by English sounds. You feel like a good student because you put in the time. But in reality, your brain was miles away. Maybe you were thinking about your grocery list, or a problem at work, or just daydreaming, and the English just became background noise.
It is so discouraging. I have had students tell me they listened to English for 30 days straight, every single day on the bus to work, and they felt like their listening skills didn't improve at all. They still couldn't understand fast conversations, they still couldn't catch the details, and they come to me asking, what is wrong with me? Is my brain just not wired for languages?
And the answer, of course, is that there is nothing wrong with their brain. In fact, their brain is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. Today, we are going to fix this problem. We are going to talk about why passive listening often fails, and we are going to teach you a specific method we call the 20-80 hybrid routine. This is a way to structure your listening so that you actually retain vocabulary and improve your grammar without having to sit at a desk with a textbook for hours.
This is really the key to using our podcast effectively. You know, we produce these episodes to help you live your daily life in English. We talk about work, money, relationships, health, travel, and everyday problems. But simply pressing play isn't enough. You need a strategy. So Sarah, before we get into the solution, can you explain why our brains do this? Why do we tune out the English we are trying so hard to learn?
It comes down to something called habituation. Your brain is an incredibly efficient machine. Its main job is to filter out information that isn't immediately important so that you can focus on what is. Think about the sound of a fan in a room, or the sound of traffic outside your window. When you first walk into the room, you hear the fan loud and clear. But after 5 minutes, do you still hear it?
No, not really. It just fades into the background. I stop noticing it completely because I am focusing on my work or conversation.
Exactly. Your brain says, okay, this sound is constant, it is not a threat, and it is not providing me with new, urgent information, so I am going to stop spending energy processing it. The problem is, when you listen to an English podcast for an hour while doing something else, like washing dishes or driving, your brain starts to treat the English just like that fan. It becomes rhythm and noise, but not meaning.
That makes so much sense. So when we force ourselves to listen for long periods without a specific task, we are essentially training our brains to ignore the English. We are practicing how to tune it out rather than practicing how to decode it.
That is the danger. And that is why so many people get stuck at the intermediate plateau. They have plenty of input, but very little intake. Input is just what hits your ears. Intake is what your brain actually grabs, processes, and stores. We want to move you from input to intake. And to do that, we have to acknowledge a hard truth. You cannot be 100% focused for 100% of the time.
It is physically impossible. Learning a language is high cognitive work. It burns energy. If you try to sit and intensely analyze every single word of a 1-hour podcast, you will be exhausted after 15 minutes. You will burn out.
Which brings us to the solution, the 20-80 hybrid routine. The concept is simple. We are going to split your listening time into 2 very different types of activities. 20% of your time will be high-focus active listening. This is the hard work. This is where you really sweat a little bit mentally. And the other 80% of your time will be low-focus passive listening, but with a twist. It won't be completely passive. We are going to add a tiny element of gamification to keep your brain awake.
I love this because it fits perfectly with how our channel is set up. We have those short 20-minute lessons, which are perfect for the 20% active part. And then we have the long, deep dive podcasts that are great for the 80% passive part. It's really designed to fit into a normal, busy lifestyle.
Exactly. If you want to stop wasting your time and start seeing real results in your fluency, you need to subscribe to the channel right now, because every week we give you the materials for both parts of this routine. But let's break down the 20% first. Mark, tell us about the active routine. What should I be doing during those 20 minutes?
Okay, so the 20% active routine is your study time, but I don't want you to think of it as studying grammar rules. This is about training your ear to decode sounds and training your mouth to reproduce them. You should do this when you have 20 minutes of quiet time, maybe with your morning coffee or right when you get home from work. You are not multitasking here. You are just listening.
And the technique we recommend for this is called pause and paraphrase. This is a game changer. Most people, when they listen actively, try to write down everything they hear, or they try to translate it into their native language to make sure they understood. We want you to stop doing that.
Right. Translating creates a lag in your brain. It slows you down. We want you to think in English. So here is how pause and paraphrase works. You play one of our short lessons or a segment of a conversation. You listen for about 30 to 60 seconds, just enough to hear a complete thought or a small part of a story. Then you press pause.
And here is the magic step. Once you pause, you have to say out loud, yes, out loud, what you just heard. But you don't repeat it word for word like a parrot, and you definitely do not translate it. You have to summarize the main idea using your own simple English words.
This is harder than it sounds, isn't it?
It is much harder than it sounds, because when you listen, you think you understand. You nod your head, but when you try to speak it back, you realize where the gaps are. You might realize, oh wait, I know they were talking about a meeting, but I don't actually know why the boss was angry. I missed that connection.
Exactly. That struggle is where the learning happens. Let's give an example. Let's say you are listening to an episode about work and money, and you hear a sentence like, "The company's quarterly earnings were significantly lower than anticipated, leading the board to implement a strict hiring freeze for the foreseeable future."
Okay, that is a complex sentence. Quarterly earnings, anticipated, hiring freeze. If I'm doing pause and paraphrase, I hit pause. Now, I shouldn't try to say that exact sentence back. I should say something like, "The company didn't make enough money recently, so the bosses decided not to hire any new people for a while."
That is perfect. See what Sarah did there? She took complex vocabulary like hiring freeze and foreseeable future and boiled it down to meaning, not hire new people for a while. This proves that she actually understood the concept, not just the sounds.
And it forces your brain to retrieve vocabulary. You have to reach into your own memory and pull out words to build that summary. That retrieval process is what locks grammar and vocabulary into long-term memory. If you just listen and nod, it stays in short-term memory for about 5 seconds and then disappears.
And what if I can't do it? What if I pause and I literally can't explain what I heard?
Then you have identified a blind spot, and that is great news. It means you need to rewind and listen again. Maybe you need to look up one keyword. That moment of "I don't know" is the most valuable part of the session because it shows you exactly what you need to learn next. You are not just letting the noise wash over you.
So that is the 20% active routine. You do that for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. It's intense, it's focused, you are speaking out loud. But Sarah, we can't do that for an hour. We would be exhausted. And honestly, most of us listen to podcasts while we are doing other things, driving, cooking, walking the dog. So how do we handle the other 80% of the time?
This brings us to the 80% passive routine. This is for your low focus time. This is when you are on the train or folding laundry. You want to enjoy the story. You want to relax. But remember the fan effect? We need a way to keep the brain slightly awake so it doesn't filter out the English completely. We need a way to tell the brain, hey, this noise is important.
We call this technique keyword hunting. It's a way to gamify your listening. Instead of trying to understand every single word, which is stressful and leads to burnout, you set a very simple goal before you press play. You are going to hunt for 3 specific words or concepts.
This works so well because it changes your mindset from "I need to be perfect" to "I need to find the treasure." Let's say you are listening to one of our hour-long deep dives about travel. Before you start, tell yourself, okay, I'm going to listen specifically for words related to airports, money, and emotions.
That's it? Just those categories?
That's it. As you listen, you are doing your chores, you are driving.
but a little part of your brain is scanning. Suddenly you hear the host say, "The flight was delayed," and your brain lights up. Ding! That's an airport word. Then later you hear, "It was so expensive," and your brain goes, "Ding! That's a money word."
It sounds almost too simple, but I can see why it works. It keeps you tethered to the audio. You can drift away for a minute, but because you have this background mission running, you are constantly pulling your attention back to the English.
Precisely. You are training your selective attention. You are teaching your brain to pick out meaningful sounds from the stream of speech. And the best part is, you don't have to stop. You don't pause, you don't look things up. If you miss a section because you were concentrating on driving, that is fine. You just keep hunting for your keywords.
I think this is also great for exam preparation. You know, a lot of our listeners are preparing for IELTS or TOEFL. In the listening sections of those exams, you are rarely asked to summarize the whole text perfectly. You are usually asked to listen for specific details, a time, a place, a feeling. Keyword hunting is basically training for that specific exam skill, but in a low-stress environment.
That is a great point. If you are preparing for an exam, you can make your keyword hunting more specific. Listen to an episode about health and hunt for cause and effect words like because, due to, or as a result. Or listen to an episode about relationships and hunt for adjectives describing personality. You are turning your commute into a study session, but it doesn't feel like work.
And this solves the guilt problem, right? Because I think a lot of learners feel guilty when they tune out. They feel like they failed. But with the 20-80 method, you know that during your 80% time, it is okay to miss things. It is okay to not understand everything. Your only job is to catch those keywords. It takes the pressure off.
It absolutely does. It separates training from maintenance. The 20% is training. The 80% is maintenance and immersion. You need both. If you only do the active work, you won't get enough volume of English to get used to the natural rhythm. But if you only do the passive work, you won't build the deep neural connections needed to speak.
This reminds me of how children learn their first language. They have periods of intense focus where they are trying to communicate a specific need, like, "I want juice," and they are really focusing on the words and the reaction. That's the active part. But then they spend hours just playing while adults talk around them. They are absorbing the rhythm, the intonation, the sounds. That's the passive part. They do both naturally.
That is a perfect analogy. Adults often try to brute force learning by making everything intense study, but you can't sustain that. You have to find a rhythm that fits into your life. That is why our episodes are structured the way they are. We have the short, intense lessons for your coffee break and the long, rambling conversations for your life.
So let's make this concrete for everyone listening. How do they start this today?
Well, first, you need to look at your schedule. Find just one 20-minute slot where you can be alone and quiet. That is your active slot. Then look at your routine tasks. Washing dishes, driving, walking to the bus. That is your passive slot.
And don't try to flip them. Don't try to do the active pause and paraphrase while you are driving. That is dangerous and frustrating. And don't try to just passively listen during your study time, or you will get bored. Match the method to the moment.
I want to address one more specific fear I hear from students, Mark. What if they try the active method, the pause and paraphrase, and they realize they can't understand enough to paraphrase? What if the audio is just too fast?
That is a real fear. It feels like hitting a wall. If that happens, it usually means two things. First, you might need to slow the audio down. YouTube and most podcast players let you play at 0.75 speed. There's no shame in that. It is better to listen at 0.75 speed and understand than at full speed and learn nothing.
Absolutely. And second?
Second, it means you might need to focus on context clues. Often we get stuck because we hear one word we don't know, and our brain freezes, we panic. When you are doing the paraphrase technique, try to skip the word you don't know. Can you explain the sentence without that word? For example, if you hear, "The man was absolutely furious because the waiter dropped the soup," and you don't know furious,
You can look at the context. He shouted, his face was red, the waiter dropped soup on him. You can guess that furious means very angry. So your paraphrase would be, "The man was very angry because of the soup accident." You didn't know the word, but you understood the story.
Exactly. That is a win. You successfully decoded the message. And guess what? Next time you hear furious, you will remember that moment. You will remember the soup and the anger. That is how vocabulary sticks, not by memorizing lists, but by struggling to understand meaning in context.
And this connects back to our real-life topics. If you listen to our episodes about money or work, you are going to hear the same words repeated over and over in different contexts. Salary, boss, meeting, deadline. The first time you hear deadline, you might not know it, but after you hear it in 3 different stories during your passive listening, and then you paraphrase a story about it during your active listening, you will own that word forever.
It is about repetition, but repetition with variety. Passive listening gives you the volume of repetition. Active listening gives you the depth of understanding.
So here is our challenge to you. If you are subscribed to Everyday English Podcast, you have everything you need right here. We want you to try the 20-80 method for just 1 week, just 7 days.
Take one of our short videos, maybe the one about small talk or daily routines, and use it for your active session. Do the pause and paraphrase. Speak out loud. Even if you are alone in your room and you feel silly, speak out loud.
Then, take one of our longer, hour-long compilations or deep dives and put it on while you clean your house this weekend. Pick 3 keywords before you start, maybe job, family, and time, and just see how many times you catch them.
You will be surprised at how much more you hear. Suddenly, the fog of fast English starts to lift. You start hearing individual words instead of just a blur of sound. It is a really exciting moment when that shift happens.
It really is. And remember, language learning is not a sprint. It is a marathon. You cannot sprint a marathon. You need a pace you can sustain. The 20-80 method is that pace. It allows you to live your life, do your work, take care of your family, and still make progress in English every single day.
We are here to help you with that. That is why we cover the topics we cover. We want the English you learn here to be the English you can use tomorrow at your job or on your next trip. We don't want to teach you textbook phrases that nobody uses. We want to teach you the real rhythm of conversation.
So if you are ready to stop wasting time with background noise and start actually building your fluency, we have a task for you right now. We want you to try the active component immediately. Don't wait for tomorrow.
We have a video called Short Lesson, 20 Minutes to Better Listening. It is linked right on our channel page. It is designed exactly for this. It has short stories, pauses, and clear audio. Click on that video next.
Use that video to try the pause and paraphrase technique on the very first story. Just try it once. See if you can explain the story in your own words. It will feel challenging, but I promise you, it is the fastest way to get your brain back into learning mode.
And let us know in the comments how it goes. We love hearing your success stories. We love hearing when you finally catch a word you have been struggling with.
Thank you so much for listening today. Remember, your brain is powerful, but it needs the right instructions. Don't let English be just background noise. Make it meaningful.
Good luck with your 20-80 routine. You've got this.
See you in the next lesson.